Guy won $450,000 from Mr. Beast because he spent 45 days locked in a grocery store and received $10,000 for each day.
Respect. Anyway, does he actually get to keep that full $450,000? I mean, it's in his bank account, right?
No! God, please, no!
The winners of Mr. Beast contests do have to pay taxes on their prizes. That applies if they receive straight cash, a car, a house, or anything. For example, if Mr. Beast gives someone a new car, they still have to pay taxes based on the fair market value of that car.
Mr. Beast himself has been super open and transparent about the tax implications of his prizes.
Since he's receiving $1 million, he does have a large tax bill that we need to talk about.
You don't have to pay taxes. I haven't done it ever.
You do.
So don't blame him, blame the government. And this is really important because the winners of these huge prizes must set some of that aside for when the government comes after their ass during tax season.
Taxes on prize winnings can actually get kind of silly. Technically, even if you win some small prize like a phone, you're supposed to fill out a tax form and submit it to pay taxes on the value of that phone. Now, there is such a thing as a tax-free gift, but you can only receive up to $17,000 a year in that category. And this usually doesn't apply to a business like Mr. Beast's channel, which is a business, giving away prizes.
Lastly, in some cases, Mr. Beast has grossed up the prizes that he gives, meaning he pays the prize amount and the taxes up front. Let's talk about Alabama.
So this all started with 3 couples who were undergoing IVF treatment and had frozen embryos at a fertility clinic.
Some idiot tampered with the freezer and destroyed them, or as the court would say, killed them.
In response, the couples filed a wrongful death lawsuit using Alabama's Wrongful Death of a Minor Act, which applies to any, quote, minor child.
So what does child actually mean? Well, this might be surprising, but courts actually often consult the dictionary when trying to figure out what a word in a statute means. And so they looked at the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which lists as the 3rd definition of child an unborn or recently born person. The court sunk their teeth into that particular definition, which I personally didn't know existed.
And then they went further by arguing that unborn doesn't actually have to be inside of a womb, but actually applies from the moment of fertilization, meaning that these frozen embryos were legally children under this law.
For anyone who thinks this ruling was bananas, there was one dissenting judge who emphasized that this ruling would basically end all IVF treatments in the state, because no medical provider is now going to risk wrongful death lawsuits if something were to happen. And since the ruling, several clinics have stopped.
This whole case brings up the very confusing world that we now live in after overturning Roe v. Wade, where each state's now grappling with the philosophical questions of when life begins.
Can a pregnant woman legally use the carpool lane? And can an unborn child be claimed as a dependent on your taxes?
His cat was having a seizure, so he freaked out and sped his car towards an emergency vet. Police saw him and tried to pull him over for his speed, which was reportedly over 80 miles per hour.
But panicking for his cat, who by the way was named Mr. Fluffies, the man didn't stop. The police chase lasted for around a mile, and when the man arrived at the vet, he sprinted, crate in hand, toward the front door. He tried to tell police that his cat needed help, but they tased him anyway.
So thankfully, during all of this commotion, a vet employee came out and took the cat, who it turns out was fine. But the man was actually arrested.
So what he did was technically illegal. He drove recklessly and fled from police. And there's no exception to these laws in cases of emergencies. No, not even for Mr. Fluffy.
So we can't find any accurate reporting on the outcome of this case. But if it makes anyone feel better, our best guess is that this guy didn't suffer any serious legal consequences.
Remember, just because police arrest you doesn't mean you'll actually be charged with the crime. Nor does it mean a judge will sentence you. Prosecutors and judges always have a lot of discretion here, particularly in sympathetic cases.
Like where there's a video of a man speeding towards an emergency vet as his cat seizes in his arms and he gets tased. A citizen Chinese immigrant was just elected to San Francisco's election commission. And after being sworn in, she made this quote on her LinkedIn, which has now been deleted. "I'm deeply committed to ensuring that everyone, regardless of immigration status, has a seat at the table in shaping the future of our city."
This whole thing has caused a lot of backlash. And it brings up an interesting question a lot of people are asking. Like, can non-US citizens actually vote in elections? No, but also yes.
It depends on what election you're talking about. It's currently illegal for any non-citizen to vote in a federal election, like for president or Congress. That's what the law says. We're not getting into whether it actually happens or not. You can do your own research on that one.
Now, in contrast, and this is surprising to many people, some cities have recently allowed non-citizens to vote in city elections. San Francisco, for example, allows non-citizens to vote in school board elections if they're a parent of a child living in the city.
Other cities allow them to vote for mayor or city council. New York City, with an estimated 500,000 non-citizens, actually passed a law around 2 years ago allowing them to vote in all city elections.
But a court struck down that law as unconstitutional, and it's still being fought over in appeals.
So many firmly disagree with allowing non-citizens to vote, arguing that it's unconstitutional or even treasonous.
Whereas some do support their right to vote, arguing that they live in those cities and are affected by the policies within them, so they should have a say. A cop in Florida unloaded his entire weapon on a man who was handcuffed, had already been searched, and was sitting inside a police car because an acorn fell from a tree and the cop mistook the sound for a gunshot, and for some reason also thought that he'd been shot. This is totally nuts.
Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired! Shots fired!
Fortunately, the man inside the car who had been detained on suspicion of grand theft auto was not actually hit, and he was later released without charges.
The officer here has since resigned, but prosecutors have decided not to file any charges, which is a controversial take.
Shooting into an occupied vehicle could amount to aggravated assault or at least reckless endangerment. For example, recall the recent case of the man in New York City who was charged with reckless endangerment after he fired what he called warning shots to stop a homeless man from robbing a woman.
Now, we always want to give all the facts on this channel, and there are reports that the victim of the stolen car had told the officer that the suspect was known to have weapons, including those with a silencer.
That said, before an officer can legally use deadly force, they must have an objectively reasonable belief of imminent great bodily harm.
Even with that added info, that's still extremely unlikely.
In this viral video, police detain a man because they say he matches the description of someone who just committed a crime in the area. But police had the wrong guy.
And literally so many comments on this video, like almost the majority of them, with easily over 100,000 likes, are saying he's about to get paid in an easy lawsuit. But is that true?
Wrong person. Bro, I literally just ended my shift. Hold on. Oh, you got it. Hold on, let me put my phone down, okay? This is wild. I just got off work. Wrong person, I promise you. Oh my God. That's nuts. Sorry about that. You see those buildings?
So props to this guy, he handles a very stressful situation really well. But as for the lawsuit, everybody's wrong. That's really unlikely here.
And that's because, contrary to what this comment says,
Don't trust random comments on the internet.
police do not need to specify probable cause to detain someone. In fact, they don't need probable cause at all. They only need reasonable suspicion, which is a lower burden.
And is typically satisfied by seeing someone who matches the description of a suspect in an area.
Now, the detainment must be brief, and they must let him go once they realize he's not the right guy. If the detainment lasts too long, it can turn into an arrest, which is different.
But based on what we see in this video, a lawsuit likely isn't going to happen.